Hey y'all, welcome to the Team LocoFit Roundtable, hosted by me, Laurin and Karina, owner of Team LocoFit. Each week, I'm joined by one of our coaches to dive headfirst into the nutrition, training, mindset, and coaching strategies we use with our clients. If you loved the show, please subscribe, leave us a review, tell a friend, you know the drill. And for more information about coaching, the programs we offer, and additional content, visit teamlocofit.com. All right, and we are back once again with Coach Karina.
Hey guys.
And today's topic is going to be about balancing like social life and your relationship with food, and that balance of like isolating yourself and enjoying yourself, and like how to not have that like FOMO, right?
Yeah.
For lack of a better term. And this was actually a question that was sent in, so I'm going to read it, and then we're going to touch on some of the main things. And this is something that so many people deal with, and I think we've both dealt with this.
So long.
Individually,
yeah,
and then it's something that a lot of clients deal with as well. So I'm struggling to find balance between my relationships and food without going overboard or isolating myself. I keep failing at adjusting and adapting, and I'm mentally exhausted. Some days are great, my food is on track and my workouts are awesome. Other days I eat a shit lunch because all my coworkers want to go and I don't get a workout in again. How can I balance this? In college, I took a semester to focus on my health, but I really isolated myself so I wouldn't be tempted. That sucked, and I know I can't do that now. But I also don't want to continue to feel poorly every day because I don't want FOMO. So this is, again, really, really common. And this is what happens when we're dealing in extremes. Mm-hmm. And this is honestly, in my opinion, the number one reason why people are not able to successfully maintain their health and their body comp, because they're always going back and forth between like, let me isolate myself, or fuck it, I'm gonna go do all of this.
All or nothing approach, black or white thinking, like I'm either 100% on or I'm going off the rails and I don't care. And when I have clients who I feel like struggle in situations like this particularly, and maybe your approach is different, but I almost encourage them to continue to go out into those social situations, because the only way we can get good at making healthy decisions, at like practicing healthy restraint in those environments, is if we practice it. Yeah, you're gonna mess up maybe like the first 5 or 10 times, but if you just isolate yourself, you're never going to develop the skill set to practice that healthy restraint, to know what to order when you're eating out with coworkers, even if they want to order a margarita, etc. Like, you have to essentially just practice the ability to have that healthy restraint, to say no, to make decisions on, okay, this is what I need to do for myself right now, kind of balancing the daily sacrifices we make for creating a better future for our future self, and while also at the same time not isolating yourself from the entire world, a social life and things like that. And I tell my clients all the time, like, I want you to have a social life because that's a healthy part of life. We're not meant to be alone. We're not meant to be isolated. But we have to get good at making good choices in those environments.
Yeah, a lot of people will ask us, like, how do you guys do this? And it's like, I've done this so many times.
Yeah.
This is honestly a non-issue for me, not because I was just naturally really good at it, or you were either. We've literally had to go through those really, really hard situations in order to get really good. So yeah, the most typical situation that we see here is like people get really restrictive, and then they're really successful in the short term, because it's really easy to be successful when you're really restrictive. But then something comes up inevitably. Like something is going to come up in your life where you can't just like, shut the door and be like, bye for, however long.
Yeah, it's easy to be successful at something when there's very little resistance, right?
Yeah.
If I just like never left my kitchen and only had my like 8 ingredients in there and was like very adherent, then that's easy, right? Yeah. If I like lock myself in my own house. But then it's like, okay, now can I keep up these same behaviors and habits and this adherence rate while also being around food that I might want but is not best for my goals in that moment or scenario or time?
Yeah. So then when that does come up though, the client can't adjust mentally, and then they just get derailed, and then they say fuck it. And that's what we focus so much of our coaching on, because I think a lot of people, that's just really the missing piece that we've seen over the past few years. A lot of people are getting certain things right, but they're really not getting that right. And that's where we're going to see that long-term success, because again, we congratulate you if you can be really restrictive, like that's great.
Yeah.
But like, what does that mean and at what cost? And for how long? Because you know, some people can do that for a very long time, but for most people it's not. It might be reasonable for a few months, 3 months, 4 months, yay. But then like what's going to happen afterwards? Like that's not what we want to do. So I think that isolating ourselves, you know, I just really want to touch on this, like can seem in the short term easier, and to some degree we do want to bring those barriers down, right? We don't want to make it harder on people than it needs to be. Like obviously it's already hard enough, we don't need to make it harder, but things are going to get hard, and we can't just make it so easy to, like you said, like take away all those restrictions and like make that just so simple. Like, oh, I'll just make all my own food. That seems really great. Like yeah, you can make, how many meals are you eating? 4 or 5 a day? Like you're making most of them, and then you're having a few that are out. That's where you should be able to navigate all of that.
Yeah, you should be able to navigate like those 10% of meals that you eat in a week out. And then again, like I said at the beginning, it's just like practicing your choices in those situations. So if you've never, you know, dieted at all, or maybe followed a fat loss protocol with us, I definitely have to like walk clients through, okay, this is how you might want to order a meal out. And so an example I typically use is, you know, just always prioritize some sort of lean protein source. Chicken, steak, like a white fish, and then always second, prioritize a side salad or a vegetable. Ask them to cook it without oil, without butter, and then try to order like a simple carb that is going to be easy for you to guesstimate, right? Maybe don't order like some crazy concoction of who knows what, but if they have like a side potato or like rice or whatever else, I feel like pasta is going to be super difficult to.
Yeah, because there's stuff. You're not doing like plain pasta.
Like, so things that would be easy for you to guesstimate. And again, context is super important here, right? Like if you are prepping, it's going to look very different than someone who's just like in a maintenance phase, from someone who's just in a like a very loose fat loss phase with no like hard deadline. But just like practicing what to do in those specific environments essentially calls on you to put yourself out there and not isolate yourself.
And perfect example, so last week I went out to dinner with a few friends, and again, this is something that is really, really easy at this point, like for me. And there's sometimes where I make the decision, like, no, like we're somewhere that I want it to be like more indulgent, but for the most part, like I'm ordering like pretty normal food, right? So without even really thinking about it, we got some appetizers, but I ate the shrimp because I love shrimp. So I had a few shrimp, and then I had some bread with olive oil, like a few tiny pieces, because it was like really good bread. Like, you know, like really, it was like rosemary, like fresh, warm. I had wine, and then I ordered salmon, and it came with this like, you know, some butter thing. So I just put that on the side. So it was just like grilled salmon with grilled veggies and rice, and it was like, that was a very normal meal.
That's something I would make at home.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like, and I went there and I was, you know, with friends, and we enjoyed it and everything was great, and I had like 37 drinks afterwards, so that was a different story, but that was
you saved it for the calories out.
That's what we're gonna say. That's what it was for.
It was a totally planned night of tons of alcohol consumption.
No, but that's just a really good example of like being able to go somewhere that I could have ordered something that was obviously a lot denser and maybe like harder to estimate, but that's second nature now. Like I'll choose, all right, well, so for people, when like something like bread comes out, or like, you know, if you're at a Mexican restaurant and there's like chips and salsa, that can be so hard for people. So in the beginning, if you're like really struggling with that, it might just be easier to be like, no. Like I'm just not gonna have any of this, because for some people, they can't just have a few. For me, I'm at the point where I'm like, I can have 2 little pieces of bread and it's really no issue, right? So it kind of just depends on where you're at. But one part I really wanted to touch on here is that it is important to recognize times to say yes and recognize times to say no. So that really kind of plays on that. Like sometimes it might be better to say no to that. And especially in this situation where she's talking about like going out to lunch with like coworkers and then like missing work, because a lot of people train during their work, train during their lunch break or whatever, or just in general, if you are going to train later, but if you ate shit at lunch, then you're like, oh, I don't feel good, I don't want to go to the gym. Kind of has like that like domino effect. There's some times where you're going to just have to say, if this is not like a mandatory thing and everybody's just going out to lunch because that's like what they normally do, it just, hey, I brought my food, like I'm good, you know, I'll catch up with you guys later. Because I don't really like to put like worth on like food, right? Like I don't want the discussion to be about that, but is that meal like worth it? Or is it better served for like, hey, on Saturday you're gonna go out to this like new restaurant and it looked really good, and like that would be a time where we want to, you know, have a little bit more flexibility. During the week, like this lunch at this like basic ass restaurant,
Chili's or something.
Yeah, exactly. That's a time to be like, all right.
I'm gonna say that for like Ruth's Chris kind of night. Maybe not like Chili's down the road. Nothing against Chili's. Like if you like Chili's food, it's not that bad. But
repulsed right now. I'm like, guess where we're going next time we hang out? I'm like, Chili's.
No, thank you. Or like Applebee's or something.
Okay, yeah, no. Chili's is superior to Applebee's.
Yeah. Dude,
I haven't
been to Applebee's since I was like 12.
Yeah.
I haven't been to Chili's.
Sorry,
in like
guys.
3 years.
We're just like so rude and pretentious.
No,
Chili
we're not.
Chili has that one thing
you know
that's
I like
pretty
my
good.
McDonald's ice cream cones.
Okay,
like I will roll through a McDonald's and drive through.
Not even just that. One time we were like talking about Taco Bell. Chris like, I love Taco
dude,
Bell.
I
went on
Taco
Thursday.
Bell.
I'm like, dude, who just eats at Taco Bell?
Okay, I know.
A
lot of people are going to be repulsed by that, but I enjoy Taco Bell.
I don't even think that I've ever. I'm like, I can't remember a time eating there.
Oh.
But,
oh my god. Anyways, but honestly, like, not to be like weird, but I feel like it could be macro friendly. Like the soft tacos are like pretty light, and then you can like turn them into light options. Like instead of like cheese, you can ask for like pico. Anyways, not that I'm dieting on Taco
burrito,
Bell.
I'm gonna go to Chipotle. Like,
yeah,
I'm not gonna go to
See, exactly. So right, like,
but Chipotle is a perfect example of somewhere where, say, everybody's going to lunch and you're like, okay,
that's easy.
So there's two things. There's one where you could say, all right, I'm just not gonna go, like, because I either don't need to, or I just don't want to eat that food, or whatever the reason is. You decide that you don't want to go. You have to say, I brought my food, I'm not going. Or if it is something to where you're like, I do want to go, but I'm gonna make a choice that fits what I'm getting. Yeah. So pretty much anywhere that you eat, literally almost anywhere, you can make what we call a better choice.
Right, yeah. What's the best possible choice in that situation?
And, you know, for your goals, which is going to be different for everybody. But, like, if you're going to Chipotle, like, you could get, like, the quesadilla and, like, the burrito with, like, double rice. Or you could get, like, a bowl with double meat, all the veggies, half rice. Or something like that. Like, if that works for what you're doing. So there's always a situation to where you can make it work. But I do want people to recognize that, like, it is important sometimes to say no, because you do want to say yes to other things. But that doesn't mean that you're just like missing out, and kind of like rate what you're going to be doing during that week.
Yeah, and like for example, one thing it's like silly, but like for me, like Fridays are like Starbucks days. So like it's my
Apparently.
it's like my little
I had to get that earlier. I'm reading it like, because I just get, you guys know, just like, black coffee. And so Karina's like, she sends me her text. I was like, hey, do you want anything? She's like, yep. And I was like, whoa.
It's like a paragraph for one drink.
She's like, I'm that person now. Okay. So I'm reading it. They're like, I'm like, okay. I don't know.
I know 90% of the people listening to this follow the macro barista. And so you gotta like, that is me making the best possible choice at Starbucks. Ice cream, green tea latte for 90 calories, which is typically like, I don't know.
How much is it normally?
I think it's like 150 or 200. I don't know. It's very good. I just order it anyway.
Okay.
Not that I would even care, but it's like, I'm trying to be healthy sometimes.
Okay. But, so what's in it? Tell them the magic recipe apparently.
So it is, so you ask for grande ice green tea latte with almond milk. They typically make it, I think, with like normal milk. And then with 4 pumps of sugar-free vanilla instead of pumps of like,
hella calories.
Yeah, instead of the regular vanilla. And then there's also sugar in the scoops of matcha. So it usually comes with 3 scoops, and I just asked for 1. Bam.
Okay.
Anyways,
Starbucks. Fridays or Starbucks is Fridays day.
So like also just limiting, like, you know, maybe not going out to lunch with your coworkers every day. Say, hey guys, like I'm not gonna go today, but like let's plan to go somewhere Friday. So you're like planning that ahead of time and things like that. And then also to kind of point toward her statement on her schedule where she says, you know, she doesn't have time to maybe work out, or she misses a workout because she goes out to eat. For me, and I know this isn't for everyone, but no matter what my life looks like in a time where I'm much busier, I find that training first thing in the morning is always best. Even, you know, sometimes for me that looks like waking up at 5 in training, or that looks like waking up at 6 in training. But in that sense, it's like no matter what happens the rest of the day, I already got what I needed to do done. If it's like a random lunch, or I have to go to the ER for something, like Jesus. Just like random scenarios that you cannot predict. You know, at least I got my workout in, okay? I might be going to the ER, but I got my workout in. I might have appendicitis, but I still worked out. Like,
I'm like, are you okay, dude?
So,
Like,
anyways.
is everything good? You're like, man, I'm having these side pains.
I thought I had appendicitis last week.
Okay, this
But
is where
it's
this is
fine
coming
now.
from. Got it. You're all good now? You're cured?
Yeah, I don't know what it was, but my stomach was hurting.
Okay, well, we can dive into that later, but but no.
It went away.
But no, I think training, fitting in your schedule, because we all know that not just work lunches can come up, but everything, like, especially with work, can get really, really crazy. And this goes back to the whole, like, I want to have goals, but I don't want to isolate myself. Well, you have to put yourself in a situation to where your schedule will work for you. And if you know that, like, you can knock this out in the beginning of the day, and you can just get it, like, this is done now, like you said, everything. You can go to the ER, it doesn't matter, you got your workout done, right?
Yeah.
But seriously.
Or you have a close friend that has a baby and you need to go visit that baby, like.
Yeah, there's a lot of reasons.
There's a lot of unknowns that could happen, but at least you got your workout in before the rest of the world started their day. 5 a.m.
Most of the time it's just going to be normal, like, work things, or like I said, if at the end of the day, I know for me, like, by the end of the day,
tired.
I'm just like,
I cannot train after like 3 p.m. I'm like, oh, my brain is.
I mean, I can, well, I do,
physically I
do,
can,
yeah.
but is it going to be as...
That used to be like my time to train was like later, and I think it's definitely changed though with the garage, because it becomes like so unbearable, you know, after a certain period of time. So it's kind of like, if I don't get it done by like a certain time in the morning, it's like no return. And then of course I can go to the regular gym, but that depends on traffic. It's far, you know, like I have to kind of time that up. So I would say that there can always be a million excuses later. It's better to set that up early. And that's one thing, you know, to close this out, to like identify your weaknesses and address them. So if your weakness is, if I don't train, or I don't go for a walk, or I don't get something done in the morning, then the whole rest of my day is thrown off. Or think about, if you do get that done, how many more positive things are gonna happen, right? So it's like, there's a trickle effect, like both ways, like a domino effect both ways, so like positively or negatively. So think, okay, if you go out and have this lunch, and then that kind of completely throws you off. Or no, I brought my food, and like you said, pre-plan it for one day or whatever. There just has to be more of a balance here, and I think there's just no short way around. You're going to fail a lot before you get this. And that's really the hardest part to like tell somebody, right? Because you're like, I don't want you to fail, but I think you're going to, you know, like you're
and sometimes you have to, because that's how we learn. And I don't know this person, so I am trying to be careful about making specific assumptions. But when you say something like, sometimes I hit all my macros and I have great workouts and I feel great. Or sometimes I go out to lunch and then the rest of the day is shit. Like, why can't you maybe eat not such a great lunch, but still have a great workout? So like trying to find that balance of not even always like eating your best while eating out, but still like not allowing one bad meal to derail the rest of your day.
And that's just really common, because people who struggle with this are going to have these huge swings between like being all in or all out, or like this perfect, or like this, I'm just out the window and doing nothing. And that's just, I mean, this happens with everything, with training, with food, with their mindset. Like, it's just a very obviously all or nothing type thinking just on display. And this is what we work with so many people through. And I just think that understanding, okay, as soon as this happens, it's not like everything's over. Like, the switch doesn't have to flip. The switch can like start to turn, but then we can say, no, hold on. We can stop this.
Yeah, I feel like you've said this before, but what I tell clients all the time is, I would rather you be just 80% on 100% of the time, rather than 100% on, 50% of the time, and then like going off the rails 50% of the time.
Going off the rails is much harder to manage, both physically and mentally, right? Because those two things tie into each other. So like every time that you like go off the proverbial rails, right, which means like you're probably going to, eat, let's just say like shitty food, whether it's high calorie food. You might be even not just eating all the time, you might be skipping meals, just kind of eating haphazardly. Like, we all know, we can all fall into that. Like, we're eating haphazardly, we're maybe not eating great food when we are eating, not training, not getting outside, not doing our activity. All those things kind of fall together. But then not just physically, but then mentally, we feel really, really shitty. Not just from we feel shitty because those behaviors make us feel not great, but then we also have that like guilt and that just like, oh shit,
like
well,
defeated.
I'm so down, like look at me, I failed again, and then it just is a cycle. And so physically and mentally it's really, really hard to recover from that. And we do it all the time with clients, you know, like it is possible, but it's just harder to rein in instead of saying, wow, I had a really shit lunch today, or you know, I didn't get my workout in on Wednesday, but I'm gonna get the rest of these done for the rest of the week. And I think that's where it's really important, and that's where you have to identify what was the specific weakness, like what can I plan or what can I change in order to make this more successful for the following day or the following week.
And in our check-ins we have a section dedicated to kind of analyzing this, right? So we ask, you know, what were your biggest barriers or greatest challenges this week to adhering to the plan, to getting to your goal, and then what are your biggest wins? So then we're forcing you to pay attention that, like, okay, you don't have to go off the rails 100% of the time. There's always something good to celebrate. You know, you're not 100% a failure, because if we do continue to have that narrative in our mind, it's even more discouraging and really hard to get back on track. So just, you know, it sounds cheesy, but stay positive.
Like, not much to add there, 'cause you guys know me. Just kidding. But no, I think in sometimes school it's cool to read when it's like the barrier is also like what the win turned into. And I find that happens a lot. Like, oh,
so the barrier was this, but I turned it around and that was my win.
Yes, and that's when you're like, damn, like this client is definitely making progress, and that's super cool to see. And again, that takes time. And if you are listening to this and you're like, yeah, I've tried all these things, really dig deeper and to be like, okay, why does this keep happening? Like, what are the things that I can actually control that are in front of me, that I can say yes to, that I can say no to, that I can adjust, and then really hold yourself accountable to those things. If you're gonna say no, hold yourself accountable to saying no. If you're gonna say yes, hold yourself to that. You know, like you can't just be like, yeah, I'll say no, and then Tuesday comes around and you're like, huh, Chili's, you know, like it's
Chili's, what's up?
We could get lit at
lunch through the double doors.
Chili's. Like the elevator gift, was that you?
I'm here.
Yeah, Karina was an elevator. I was like, hey, text me when you're in the elevator. She's like, I'm elevator.
I meant in elevator, but I was getting nervous because the elevator doors are closing, and
Karina is now an elevator. All good, losing her mind. So, thank you for this question. If you do have any other questions for us, I will put the link below in the episode notes, and it's fully anonymous, so you can include as much information as you'd like. And then for all other inquiries, you can visit teamlocofit.com, where you can apply for coaching, subscribe to our newsletter, check out our articles, and then also listen to the other podcasts. So thank you guys so much, and we will catch you next time. Bye.